It was not death, for I stood up. Emily Dickinson. It was not death, for I stood up, and all the dead lie down. It was not night, for all the bells put out their tongues for noon. It was not frost, for all my flesh I felt Syracuse crow, nor fire, for just my marble feet could keep a chancel cool. And yet it tasted like them all. The figures I have seen, set orderly for burial, reminded me of mine, as if my life were shaven and fitted to a frame, and could not breathe without a key, and 'twas like midnight sun, when everything that ticked has stopped, and space stares all around, or grisly frosts, first autumn morns repeal the beating ground, but most like chaos, stopless, cool, without a chance or spare, or even a report of land to justify despair. Emily Dickinson. Though we often define ourselves by what we're not, the difficult question of what we are remains. So, Emily Dickinson, the sight of bodies arrayed at a funeral brings to mind the living poet's own sense of a terrible timelessness, of distance and separation from the world. So, she's called the Yellow Rose of Amherst. By turns morbid, frenzied, bitter, philosophical, grieving, ecstatic, the enigmatic Emily may ultimately be the most notable of all American poets, in part because so much of her reclusive life is lived out in poems so unmistakable that any imitation becomes parody. It's said that you can sing any Dickinson poem to the tune of the Yellow Rose of Texas. Well, I don't know about that. So Syracuse is hot African winds. That's very interesting. And chancel is the space near the altar of a church, often made of stone. So we're talking here about coffins. It's all very morbid. But yeah, it's very well written because despair, it feels like death. The death of hope is actually very much like the death of life, isn't it? The loss of life is when you lose hope, it's like losing life, isn't it? It's a sort of small death. There's the grieving, there's the melancholy and sadness. So yeah. Oh, there we have little birds in the rain. I'm observing now is and Emily Dickinson is also the one who said that hope is that thing with feathers. And she was so right. She must have been a very observant person who looked out the window quite a lot into the world.